It's 11:01, so we'll go ahead and start this event. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today as we continue the conversation about equity, diversity, and inclusion. Today's topic is around education, and we are really excited because we've got some great panelists for you today. Before we get started, I do want to just take a moment to tell you a little bit about the groups that are hosting this event. Women United and Emerging Leaders are engagement groups within the United Way of Greater Chattanooga. Comprised of thought leaders in the community, these groups hold events, network, volunteer throughout the year, providing multiple ways to engage with the community and support impact. For a little bit of background, Women United is comprised of a community of individuals committed to building comprehensive support systems necessary for families to thrive, while Emerging Leaders hosts a community of young professionals 40 and under, committed to improving the future of Greater Chattanooga for all. The best part of these groups, there's no minimum donation required to join these groups. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Mary Catherine Levy. I just realized I don't think I introduced myself. If you have more questions about getting involved. So I'm Mary Catherine Levy, Director of Women United and Community Engagement here at United Way. And again, we're so glad you're all here. Thank you for joining us. So now let's go ahead and get to the program. So we're excited to bring you today's conversation around equity, diversity, inclusion, and education. We've got some really great speakers who are working in education daily, seeing the ins and outs of how EDI impacts our students. So please welcome Terrence Banks, Assistant Director of Recruitment and Engagement at UTC, Dr. Marcia Drake, the Chief Equity Officer at Hamilton County Schools, and moderator, Dr. Elaine Swafford. She is the CEO of Chattanooga Girls Leadership Academy and the Montessori Elementary at Highland Park. That said, Dr. Swafford, I'll let you get us started.
All right, thank you. And again, thank you all for being here. I have the opportunity not only to be CEO of the schools, but I also work closely with United Way in many projects. At this point, as a matter of fact, I'm the chair campaign for the United Way this year and have served on their board. So I'm glad to be able to come in and talk to Dr. Drake and Mr. Banks today a little bit about EDI. And so I'll get it kicked off here pretty quickly. And so Dr. Drake, I'm going to start with you. So can you elaborate just a little bit about your role as the Chief Equity Officer, and how do you feel that EDI initiatives have changed in public schools over the past few years? So what's your role, and basically how's it changed the EDI portion?
Sure. So I spend my days meeting with staff members across the district and talking to them about opportunities for all of our 40,000 plus students here in Hamilton County. Work closely with the school leaders, teachers, clerical staff, parents, community members, exploring ways that we can help the students of Hamilton County thrive and experience success without limits. I find my work to be very hard, but it is most rewarding when we look at and examine some policies and procedures using an equity lens and positively affecting change for our most marginalized students. And so how has the EDI initiatives changed public schools over the past few years? I think EDI has actually changed the way that we look at our students and student outcomes. We take a closer look at them as individual students now, no longer looking at them just like as a whole body of students, but the focus is giving each student what they need to experience success in school. And as we are acknowledging that this looks different at every school, and because every child is different. So I think that that's one of the ways that is a big change that is taking place.
Okay, speaking of changes taking place, Mr. Banks, I know that as you were introduced as Assistant Director of Recruitment, tell us maybe the types of EDI centric recruiting techniques that you use to make sure that the campus is not only diverse, but also a welcoming campus to all? And then secondly, are there barriers that are identified to student success that maybe as a community we can even help address? So can you talk to us a little bit about those two areas?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So, as it pertains to recruitment, the first piece is understanding who we are trying to recruit.
Mhm.
And often when we talk about diversity, a lot of people only associate that with race, but diversity goes outside of that, especially for us here at the university. So it's super important to understand different demographics we may be trying to recruit, whether that's different students of color, whether that's students who are, living in poverty, or whether that's students who don't have access to college information, or whatever diversity it looks like for us over there, like over a larger scale of students. We try our best to recognize what those different like classes of diversity are before we try to go into the schools to speak to the students, try to draw them into our university. The flip side of that, the barriers that we face is or are being able to accommodate those student needs. So if we go out there and recruit this diverse group of students, do we have people on our campus who can meet them where they are? And I think that's the most challenging piece for us here at the university, because of course we get a student to come to college, and it's nice if all students who come to college are college ready, but that's not always the case. But we do want them to be successful at UTC. So making sure that they have resources that kind of look like what they're used to, or who kind of have mannerisms that they're used to. And it can be things as simple as like how they're spoken to, how they are supported at the university, or the most basic one is what they look like. So people who look like them in the classroom and on the campus. So that's where we typically see barriers.
I know I was on a college campus for years, and I know as you talk, the experience is important. Kids come to a college campus also for the experience. And so obviously, as you said, it needs to be a welcoming type of experience, and for them to be comfortable pretty quick. And so let's say that you do have, it's happened across the country. And let's say that you have racial tensions that rise between young students, for whatever reason, unknowingly, they may not have even known they learned things about racism at home or outside the school. Or how are teachers, and to both of you I will ask, how are teachers and administrators really set up to address it if it should arise? And either both can answer.
Okay. So for us, we typically try to open up the floor, because we are dealing with young adults who will have to deal with this in their potentially in their everyday life. We don't try to hide it or disguise it as something that's not, or this is a one-time situation where this will probably never happen to you again. We try to create an opportunity for those who have like done the wrong or have been the person like doing the negative actions or saying the negative words. We try to create that conversation to understand why it was wrong, how what you're doing is negatively impacting somebody else. And we try to get feedback and understanding from both sides of it. Why are you offended in this situation? Why does this hurt you, or whatever it may be? So we just try to be open about it. We never try to disguise it as something that is not, or that it's a one-time thing, because like I said, we're dealing with young adults who need to be able to understand that life won't always be as nice as you want it to be, and we have to learn how to navigate those challenging situations.
That's great.
Yeah, well, in the last 4 years, we've really focused on school culture under the leadership of Dr. Johnson. That's been one of our intentional focuses, is creating school environments that are inclusive of all students that they serve. We are providing PD to our teachers, so that are focusing on diffusing conflict through restorative circles. Our textbooks are filled with diverse characters, and so their students are seeing themselves in the textbooks that we are reading. And we're taking really a more proactive approach to creating school environments and cultures that embrace diversity and create a sense of belonging for all of our students.
So let me stop here and remind our audience that, feel free, if you have a question, drop it in the chat. We want you to be able to jump in through the chat process as well. And I'll be keeping an eye on that. I want to make sure our panelists know that there could be questions coming in from there. But until then, I don't see any. And so, Marcia, I'll ask you to continue. How has Hamilton County addressed some of the, and this is kind of changing in the same vein, but changing questions a little bit, but how has Hamilton County addressed the opportunity gaps brought on in light of COVID and ensuring the changes to the learning environment? So I know we had Ed Connect, right? So what kind of impact has that had, or has it shown thus far? If you can comment on those two things. You're on mute, Marcia.
So sure. So some of the how we've addressed some of the opportunity gaps. We have before and after school program in the majority of all of our schools now. We had summer reach programs this summer. We had two sessions of summer reach program just ended up summer reach. We placed devices in hands of our students 3 through 12, which was a huge endeavor. Virtual tutoring, virtual parent conferences. We've added additional time to our homework hotline, wellness Wednesdays for teachers as well as families and students. And then we recognized that, our teachers are actually going into the homes through the Zoom. But some of the other things that they've done is that our teachers have actually made some home visits. So those have actually strengthened through these Zoom courses, as well as these home visits with recognizing our students. That strengthen those relationships between the family, the students, and the teachers. And we partner with some outside agencies, and so many that I'm not going to dare attempt to name any of them. But we've also did some TV programming. We did have some TV programs on PBS, and that we did live, as well as we did some programming for some of our younger students there. We're gearing up to open a welcome center that focuses mainly on welcoming our newcomers, our new students to the country and their families, and providing them what they need prior to them actually going into the schools. And, we have a renewed focus on our response to intervention, and with the strong desire that we will catch students early on that are falling behind academically. And one of the big things is that we're providing those wraparound services for all of our students. Now, you asked me about that Ed Connect and what that has done. Wow. So that has opened up numerous doors for thousands of our students, but not only our students, but for their parents, grandparents, others within the home. They're being able to continue with their telehealth appointments by having that access to that internet service. And there's just a plethora of things that they have access to based on that Ed Connect. So it's opening up a new world, to our students as well as those family members.
Yeah, I know there was information that was sent out from the district on Ed Connect. I happened to be in one of the neighborhoods yesterday, and I saw a big sign on one of the posts. And so, I think you all did a great job of trying to get that information out to our community, and I know it's been helpful. What is that Wednesday wellness? What do y'all do on the Wednesdays? That caught my attention. People out there may want to know what that is.
Yes, so we had Wellness Wednesdays, which really focuses more on centering the whole the teacher. So we had sections on the teacher, and we did a lot of self-help for them. There were some teaching courses there. We focused on some mindfulness breathing, some exercises, different things there for them. And then we also had it for parents. And so one of the things that we talked to them about scheduling and setting some boundaries throughout that when we were in the pandemic, and some reading and trying to get some focuses going on, some things that the families could actually do together when we were inside spending so much time together, and some baking courses for them as well. So it was just, we provided a lot of different things that families wanted, as well as some self-care and self-help for our teachers.
I just wanted to elaborate on that because, you know, even folk in our audience, I mean, we can all learn from those moments and maybe carry some of that into our other workplaces. So thank you for elaborating on that. Terrence, what challenges, I know we talked about recruiting, but what challenges have you seen in recruiting and engaging new students amid COVID, the pandemic? And, you know, are there barriers that, again, to student success that need to be addressed not only by the university, but us, you know, as a community? But what are some things that you've seen in because of COVID and the pandemic that's occurred?
So for us, the biggest thing that I've noticed is just being able to keep students' attention, especially through like Zoom, through, you know, through the computer, what have you. It's just a whole lot more challenging because it is a lot of overwhelming information to some students, because college is new for a lot of people. And even if you've had like mentors who talk to you about college, like college changes over time. So even after I've graduated, like I feel like the dynamic of college has changed. So I can give students a little bit of insight to college, but it's just that much more challenging to try to give them that information over the computer, just because I don't seem like I am a reliable source, because I mean, essentially just the internet. So for me, I think it makes it a whole lot more challenging versus when they get to meet me in person, see me in person, like know that I'm a real person and not just a screen. It makes it a whole lot easier to connect with those students, to gain their trust, and for them to feel like I'm within reach and they can have conversations with me, or they can ask me questions and not feel like, you know, it's just my job to be on the screen, as opposed to like being a friend when I get to meet them in person.
I mean, look at that smile you got and that dynamic personality. Obviously, it makes a difference in person. I mean, you could diminish some of the COVID engagement issues just right away. So yeah, I'm sure you're right. They need to see you in person. So we talked about areas of things, engagement, but let's talk about some gaps still. So what are the biggest gaps with EDI in education on both sides, whether it's, you know, public, you know, K through 12 or higher education, but what are still some of the gaps that we're seeing, and maybe some strides that you see us taking to move forward? Because we know we don't have it all solved. So
no, we do not have it all solved. And just to kind of elaborate on what Terrence has said, that we are experiencing, one of the things that we have is in the hiring. And so we have kind of pretty much flatlined or been around the same, with around 8 to 12% of a diverse teaching staff within Hamilton County schools. And so it's been real difficult to hire and retain a diverse teaching force. Mm-hmm. So we have an intentional focus. Actually, our board passed a policy on diverse educators hiring. And so we have a real intentional focus on hiring a diverse teaching staff. and retaining that the teachers that we are able to hire. So I think that that is one of our it's a huge gap that we have. We know that students learn, research shows us that students actually do better in classes where they have a teacher that looks like them. And so we're putting an intentional focus on that so that we can increase that within Hamilton County Schools.
And when you say focus, I'm assuming you're connecting with HBCUs, teachers, colleges. How do you all plan to progress that forward to make sure that we know we have the want and the need to make it happen? But give me a couple of specifics that you can tell us about.
Okay, so we are actually going to the HBCUs and hiring. We are actually doing and using some of Teach for America. You may be aware of those things, but we have the Grow Your Own program. We looked within our district and we found out that there were several diverse candidates within our district that held degrees, but they were in other positions. And so we're doing a Grow Your Own program within districts. So some of our classified folks are going back to school and earning those degrees, and in return will actually be teachers for us. We also have the Teaching Academy at Tyner High School, which is in a sense a Grow Your Own program where we have high school students that engaged in that Teaching Academy, which is a collaboration with UTC. And we have candidates there that go on to UTC and they're working on their degrees there, that they've actually started kind of cultivating that interest and developing those skills in high school. And then they will hopefully in return be employed with Hamilton County Schools.
Very good. So Terrence, the gaps that you see with EDI in your world and strides, taken to move it forward?
So the biggest gap that always jumps out to me, and it happens a bit here at UTC. I definitely know it happens at other colleges, but when I go out on the road to recruit students, of course, like students see me, they see my hair, they hear how I talk and all that good stuff. So there's a little bit of connection like immediately right there. And I'm the first step, but when they come to the university, there aren't enough people in the classroom, like Dr. Drake said, that still looks like me. So there becomes a bit of this disconnect or a little bit of fear that maybe I'm in the wrong place. And to try to bridge that gap, we do have several programs that are in place, especially for our freshman students and our sophomore students, to help them continue to be successful. But the big thing is that the students have to walk into those programs. They have to commit to those programs. They have to say, hey, I would like to join, so that we can help hold them more accountable when they're in college so that they're more successful. But it's just a little bit of disconnect between recruiting a student to the college and keeping the student in the college. And we, like I said, we try to create programs. We have our Student Success Center, we have PAUSE, we have several programs that happen on campus, but it's just a small piece that we miss out on every year.
Gotcha. So what trends and do both of you, what trends do you see maybe because of COVID becoming sort of permanent fixtures in our system due to COVID-19, and maybe some positive trends that have emerged because of things we had to change? So what talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I think that there'll be a greater focus on the well-being of all of our students, of our teachers. And so, I think that will be something that is here to stay, that we will actually focus on that and give that the attention that it needs. I think that we will have some wraparound services for students. We know that in order for the students to be fully engaged, their basic needs have to be met. So I think that we will continue to provide some of those basic needs within the schools. I think that the personal connections, some personal connections that that the students and teachers have made by, you know, coming into their homes through these Zooms. I mean, they were literally in their homes, and you got to see how they lived, and you felt as though they were a part of the home. I'm thinking back to a time, I have two kids who are in school as well. And so my younger son, who's in elementary school, each week he would, if you completed all your work on Friday, you may be able to get off of your Zoom about an hour ahead of before school was out. Well, you know, he had become very comfortable, you know, because he's in his home. And so he knew, he said to her, I knew that you were going to call my name, and I wasn't going to have my work this week because my mom's been sick and my dad had to take over, and it's not going well. So, I mean, they had really bonded, although, you know, it was just through the screen, but they had really bonded, and, you know, he felt real comfortable sharing information with her over that. And so, yeah, he did have to stay on that. But I think those real true connections and those relationships. And I also think that teachers have, you know, their status, you know, it was that teachers were not viewed in a positive light, but now their status has been elevated to that of a hero, so to speak, now, because, and it's a desired profession again, because teachers worked really hard during this pandemic. So I think that that's been something that's been positive, is them being elevated back into a positive hero type status. Well, and the intentional inclusiveness. You know, I think that has to, that will continue. And having thoughts, you know, and it going first through how your thoughts of, or how is this affecting our students of color? How this affecting our students with disabilities? And how is this going to affect our English language learners? So I think that because through the pandemic, we had to look at different ways of delivering instruction and actually meeting the needs of our students, that those type of things are going to come to us first instead of later, at the end of the instruction. I think that we're going to plan for those things on the front end.
You kind of addressed the question that I was going to ask next, and that was, you know, how's the pandemic affected our conversation? But Terrence, I will go back and ask you, are there things that have become permanent and, you know, we've seen positive come out of this during this pandemic from your perspective?
So for me, the biggest thing that I've noticed is, since we've been a bit more secluded, time has seemed to slow down a bit. And with that, what seems like excess times, it seems like people have had a lot more opportunity to go into deeper thought. And it seems like mental wellness is becoming more of a priority, and that has been exciting to see. And the cooler thing is that even in professional sports, they are trying to highlight that more. And a lot of our students like look up to athletes because it's a desired profession. So when you see the professional athletes saying like, I had to take time for my mental well-being, well, now students feel like, okay, well, I need to make sure my mental well-being is on point as well. Since LeBron doing that, then let me do that as well, kind of deal. And I think that's a positive trend in the right direction. So that like time to ourselves has been a lot more beneficial. And the second thing is connectivity. Since everybody has been so secluded, they just ready to hang out. So it seems like students are going to jump at the opportunity to come together, to congregate. So that will make things, especially on the college level, just a lot more fun. And it speaks back to that college experience that you referred to. So those are like two big things I think that we're heading in the right direction about.
So there was a question in the chat, and I think this is for both of you all, but Are there incentives that UTC and Hamilton County schools have in place for encouraging diverse staff to come to Chattanooga? What are the incentives out there?
Oh, yes, and I would love to talk to Destiny about this a little more. I saw that question in the chat. So yes, we are. We know that research tells us that teachers really want leadership opportunities, not necessarily pay, but leadership opportunities. So we have developed leadership pipelines within Hamilton County so that you can become leaders in the district and not just a principal or assistant principal, but a teacher leader. And so we've developed those pipelines. We have mentorship here. We have some new teacher development so that those new teachers have an opportunity to get together and connect as well as grow in the profession. And then we are providing some financial incentives at some of our hard to staff schools. So that is a part of it as well, if that is what you desire. So yes, and Destiny, I would be more than happy to sit down and discuss some of those in great detail with you.
Terrence, anything to add to that?
So here at UTC, I don't know too much of the ends in terms of like hiring incentives for diverse candidates. I do know that we definitely do our best to try to let them know that UTC is a very open campus and we want you to feel free to be 100% you here on our campus. So we don't try to diminish who you are. We don't try to water down who you are or how you are. You know, we want to hire you for your specific characteristics and what you can bring to our campus. So we definitely try to make sure people who are coming to UTC understand that UTC is home. So if we've selected you to come work with us, it's because we want you how you are so that students can experience you how you are. But that's all that I can attest to in terms of like hiring and diversity on that side of things.
Dr.
I
Swafford,
was muted. I was muted. You got to do that at least once during a conversation or you're not Zooming. I've decided to prove that we're really Zooming. So question, particularly Marcia, Chattanooga 2.0, talked about there was like a 30+ gap, 30, almost not quite 31, but about a 30% gap between the number of white students who enter ready graduates and as opposed to their 30% of the number of white students who are considered. There's a 30% gap between the white students who are ready and their peers of color. Okay. And talking about ready graduates. So what's the steps that we're taking to kind of combat that gap of college ready between the white students and those who are of color?
Okay, so we are, so one of the things is that in some of our schools, we did not have AP courses. So we have made sure that we have advanced placement courses in all of our high schools. We are providing access to certifications as well, because we do know that there are several jobs within Hamilton County that require a certification, and so and not necessarily a degree. So we're making sure that all of our students have access to that, to some at least some type of certification courses within their high schools. We have we have just a plethora of opportunities. You're having students, we are a zone district. However, with our Future Ready Institute, you can apply and attend a school out of your school zone that has a institute that you are interested in as a high school graduate. well, as a high school student. And we have increased our number of school counselors who can be in the schools actually advising our students on the path that would be of interest to them. So we're doing, first of all, we had to acknowledge and look at that data. And then we have taken some action to move that needle in the right direction.
So just a follow-up, and one of the questions that I had was, and you've addressed that, is how do you bring equity to your workplace? And I think you've mentioned part of that. And I know for the county as well, you know, there's a push on, I know that there was a lax on ACT for some colleges this year due to COVID, but that will be back in place, I'm assuming, Terrence, next year. I don't know how you're addressing that with, and I guess we would like to know what's that going to look like next year, because ACT and SAT, they're the measurements for college ready. And like I said, I think the state last year, you know, relaxed that just a little bit, but I'm assuming that's still going to be the measure coming forward.
So for us at UTC, we understand that the dynamic of like high school has changed. So we try to align like our requirements with what's happening in schools. So I know this upcoming school year, the ACT still won't be mandatory in order to be admitted into UTC. We're still looking for pretty nice high school GPA to be admitted into UTC. And the hope is students who've entered into high school, like from the COVID like start up until like that class graduates, like we're most likely to try to be a little bit more relaxed with ACT during that time frame, because a ninth grader who started high school during COVID probably had the weirdest high school experience in the world. So we're trying to just like stay in line with what's happening with that. But I can't see that changing like in the next 2 years. Who knows? They don't let me make the decisions, but this is just based off the information that I received and the conversations we've had.
I get what you're saying. So those kids who were in the pandemic last year, they still have kind of we're going to look at the GPA until after this year anyways. And then, but it is important that we continue to teach at those levels, because so that GPA really means what it means. And an A is, as a superintendent years ago would say, an A is an A across all schools. So that's really good. I would like to, we have a question here, and I'm not sure. It talks about incentivizing DEI through the orientation process, and I'm not sure exactly. We can bring them on if you would, to let them ask the question to make sure that I have it right.
Francesca, if you want to unmute, you can ask that question. We were a little confused about what you were asking.
Yeah, no, that's correct. In regards to like the workforce, for some universities, they have a student workforce, or even for the actual people that is working for the students. After they get hired, or also at the workforce, is there any part during their orientation process that talk about DEI, about not just, you know, some policy where they say, you know, this is an environment full of equity, like if they're actually doing something to be added into the orientation process?
I know that recently UTC just hired a vice chancellor in that area. And so I'm sure that they are making that part, making that part of the fabric, I would say, of the university, I would think, through, you know, that action.
Yeah, so our onboarding process, or our orientation process for our new faculty and staff members, actually happens in our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So it is like integrated in the process to let them know like, hey, understand that everything we're doing here, we're trying to do it through a diverse lens. We actually have a program in place where they try to encourage us to get, I want to say it's like anywhere from 24 to 30 hours of additional learning as it pertains to diversity and inclusion. And they offer those various opportunities throughout the year. And it doesn't hurt like your time in your office or anything of the sort. So as long as you committing like 1 or 2 hours like to that program, then that still counts as your work hours to accomplish that 30-hour goal that they want us to try to meet each year. And they have like regular trainings on the computer that we're supposed to keep up with. So they do a lot to just naturally weave it into the fabric of campus. So I don't know if that
Good.
answers your question directly enough, but that's what I've seen from my end.
Marcia, we have a minute or so. Could you address that as what happens in Hamilton County?
As far as coming in, so we have some.
Good morning, sunshine.
Okay, so we have our new teacher orientation. We have that would address that. We also try and make sure that you're viewing your code of ethics when you are onboarded here at Hamilton County Schools. I hope that that's answering what
good.
she's asking.
I think so. I'm gonna end it up, but yeah, I think that does answer. I think that both schools, both systems acknowledge, most systems are acknowledging at this point that it has to be ingrained in what we do going forward, and the conversation has to continue. And let me round this out with a question about community partners. So are there things that community partners can do to assist with DEI after school? Particular, this comes from Takora Johnson, the CEO of Girls Inc. But seasonal camp settings, are there things that they can put into their programs to assist with DEI? And this will be our last question as we wrap up.
Okay, well, I think that continuing to be inclusive and making sure that the programs are inclusive to all students, and that is a focus that you have, understanding, having some programming on understanding differences, perhaps conducting some conflict resolution through some restorative circles there, and that would be some training that we could probably work with Ms. Johnson over there at Girls Inc., who is a great partner of Hamilton County Schools. So just to kind of infuse some of the programs that we have and to continue them in the after school program that she has. So would be more than happy to sit down and talk with her on that as well.
Great. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to our host, and thank you all for, thanks Dr. Drake and Mr. Banks for joining us and taking time to answer some of our questions and just have this great conversation. And so I think that we're right on the mark for moving to our next piece. And so we're going to hand it back over to Mary Catherine, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Swafford, for agreeing to moderate this. Thank you so much, Dr. Drake and Terrence, for being a part of this conversation. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you all spending part of your workday with us. We know you all have busy schedules, and so we just really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this. So that said, again, thanks everyone for joining us. If you want to know more about Women United or Emerging Leaders or United Way, please feel free to give me an email or a call. I'm always available. And we look forward to having you at our next conversation, likely sometime in November. So thank you all so much and hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, everybody.